Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to another swing state analysis. And technically, Texas isn't. I'd call it a battleground state, but it's certainly not swingy at all. Um, but there's a lot of stuff going on, and Texas is a shifting state in terms of its political makeup and its tendencies. Now, a person would be forgiven for thinking it truly is extremely competitive given the 2018 Senate election result, where Beto O'Rourke only lost to Ted Cruz by about 3%. And that is, in my opinion, or at least from what I've heard, it seems to be the main crux of the argument that Texas is truly competitive in 2020. That and Donald Trump's lagging polling numbers. And I don't want to harp up on that last one because I think everybody is right now. But the truth is, Texas really isn't. The 2018 Senate election really isn't an accurate measuring stick. Truth is, midterm elections generally aren't, especially Senate elections, because guess what? The Senate elections tend to favor one party over another, which is normal. And it's typically the party that does not hold the White House. And in Texas, of course, and of course in 2018, that was the Democratic Party. So Texas was going to be a little bit more competitive in 2018, at least in the Senate election, than it otherwise would have been. Add in the fact that Beto O'Rourke had a ton of money coming into his campaign from both the Democratic Party at large as well as from just, people all over the state and, of course, outside of the state. There was some level of national attention given to the race. Whether or not that actually affected things, I don't know. Because normally when national attention is given to a midterm race, it tends to trend closer to the presidential election result than it otherwise would. Because it just motivates the party of the president, basically, to turn out because they're afraid of losing ground in a place that they probably shouldn't. But the other factor that led to that one particular election being competitive was the fact that Ted Cruz is not exactly a popular figure, even in Texas. Sure, he's popular among most Republicans, but in general, no, not really. Not really. So, combine all those factors, and you had an election where Beto O'Rourke actually beat Hillary Clinton's numbers somewhat significantly. It was a healthy margin that he beat Clinton's numbers. And Ted Cruz underperformed the Donald's numbers. And it seems to me, and it feels to me, that was a maximization of what Democrats could achieve in Texas at that point, and maybe in terms of what they can do in 2020 at the presidential level. Of course, some people have said that, oh, well, because it's competitive there, Cornyn's in danger. Well, no, number one, he's not. Cornyn is not Ted Cruz. He is very popular in Texas, and he's not hated by anyone, really. Trump is a different story. And Trump is not a very good fit for most of the South, especially state like, say, Texas. But he's still, in my opinion, probably going to win. Simply because there is just way too much red in terms of population in order for the Democrats to actually carry the state. Now, the blue county here, that's Dallas, that's Houston, that's Austin, that's San Antonio, that's El Paso. And Brownsville's here, and this is kind of the... yeah. So, just as a quick little reminder, this is, of course, where, super, super red. We're talking about places where Clinton was only in the single digits in terms of raw vote totals in some of these counties out here. Now, it's not to say that they're highly populated. Some of these are. If I remember correctly, Amarillo's up here. Lubbock's in this area. So, there is definitely, and I'm not saying that the Democrats aren't improving in Texas. They are. But the story with, like, a lot of the South, and Texas is a part of the South, especially if you go to, say, East Texas, this area here, oh yeah, it's part of the South. Over here, it's kind of, the Southwest. Down here is kind of a mix between South and Southwest, and it's actually kind of cool. Up here, you have the Great Plains area. So, Texas is kind of in a crossroads, and that's why I always say Texas is Texas. Texas will do whatever Texas does, and Texas will make the choice that it will make. Now, the important things to remember are that the Houston suburbs are still red, Fort Worth is still red, the Dallas suburbs are still red. And Texas is a state that still has the potential to go to Republicans, even at the national level, by double-digit numbers. And I would say the more relevant statewide elections from 2018 would be the gubernatorial results, as well as Attorney General and all the commissioners. Because that's what you would expect in Texas, regardless of the national environment. It's just the way it is. And Texas is a little bit different than a lot of states where you have very highly populated cities and not a ton of people out in rural areas. Texas may have 3 cities over 1 million people. I think a few of the top 10 cities in terms of population. And that's just the city limits, that's not counting their metro areas. But they have but Texas has 3 very large cities, as well as El Paso and Austin. And yet, Democrats still get their rear ends handed to them on the regular statewide in the Lone Star State. And that's because Texas has a lot of people living in exurban and rural areas. Because the state is so damn big. And that's geographically. And also population. Texas, of course, second most populated state, and they're going to gain a heap of representatives in the next apportionment. I think the smallest number I've seen projected to them is a gain of 3 representatives. I've seen 4 is considered is not unlikely. So Texas is growing. Texas is already big. And Texas is still red, but it's slightly more purple. It is slightly more purple. And that does have some implications for the future, and looking at it in, say, 2028 or maybe 2024, if things go really well for the Democrats, they could win it. But 2020, I think, is just too much. It's too heavy of a lift, and the Democrats have much easier pickup targets, such as Arizona and North Carolina and Georgia. Yeah, Georgia is more, in my opinion, more likely than Texas. And that's of, historically red states rather than just swing states. And I don't think that is unfair. I think that's reasonable. It's a reasonable conclusion to make, especially with as we get on and everything going on, and Trump's polling numbers start to somewhat normalize and regress back towards the mean. We'll see what happens, obviously. But at the end of the day, I think people tend to overstate 1 or 2 points that will, back up what their beliefs are. They'll look at, it's cherry-picking data, and I'm not going to say that I'm completely guilt-free when it comes to occasionally cherry-picking data. Sometimes I'll ignore certain data points because I don't trust the way that those data points were gathered. But I like to try and be as objective as possible, and I like to try to gain as much information as I can get. Because at the end of the day, the more information I have, the better my analysis, the better my predictions, the better my forecasts. I'd rather get an accurate picture than one that backs up what I believe. And my belief is, yes, Texas is moving towards the Democrats. But not that quickly. Anyway, I want to thank everyone for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see y'all next time. And remember, if you like the content, likes, comments, subscriptions, they always do help, and I greatly appreciate them. And thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.